This is Dr. Brass, and she will be presenting analysis of technical operations job tasks. Please take it away, Dr. Brass. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm actually in DC, so I appreciate everyone allowing me to call in. I can see the slides, and I'm talking to you on my cell phone. So if the volume has issues or whatever, please just let me know. And today I'm going to be talking to you about Project 17, analysis of technical operations job tasks. When we originally proposed the work, this was a collaboration between Drexel with me as the project PI and Stephen Landry in Purdue. And between the funding of the award and today, we're also collaborating with one of our industry partners, Benjamin Bell at EduWorks. And because this is our first PMR, I thought it would be useful to both let you know a little bit about each of us, and if there are any students in the room, there's a message here. So in full disclosure, Steve Landry and I were both PhD students together at Georgia Tech. We both graduated in the early 2000s. And this is the first project that we're collaborating on together. And idiosyncratically, Benjamin Bell and I were both undergraduates together at University of Pennsylvania in the 80s. And this is also the first project that we're collaborating on together. So in the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon kind of a story, you never know when you're going to collaborate with people with whom you had been students, and this is one of those stories. So thank you for that. My background is aviation human factors. I have a background as a private pilot, and before I started my PhD, I did some work for IBM before it got sold to Lockheed Martin, developing air traffic control systems. And after that time, also did a lot of research on the flight deck side. And I've had operational experience with flight deck operations, including having a jump seat pass with Delta Airlines, as well as observation of commercial airline and regional flight dispatchers, airline meteorologists, tower TRACON, and en route air traffic controllers. Steve Landry, who is he's an associate professor and associate head in the School of Industrial Engineering at Purdue. Before he completed his PhD at Georgia Tech, he has a master's in aeronautics and astronautics from MIT and a BS in electrical engineering from WPI. He also has done a lot of work in air transportation system engineering and human factors with a strong focus on human-computer interaction and flight deck automation. He was an aeronautics engineer at NASA Ames, did many field tests with ATC facilities in support of advanced air traffic control automation. And before that, he was actually also has military experience as a C-141B aircraft commander, instructor, and a flight examiner, and has over 2,000 heavy jet flying hours and refueling experience. And Benjamin Bell, by the way, Ben, are you there?
No, I believe that. No.
Okay.
He is not. I think he's in
I was
Orlando.
going to give him a chance to introduce himself. I know Steve's not there. Ben, his PhD is from Northwestern. He did his master's actually at Drexel, where I'm a professor now, as well as one at Embry-Riddle. And I mentioned his BS from Penn. he has expertise in advanced information systems and their interaction with individuals and teams. He has technical expertise in artificial intelligence, human system integration, manned and unmanned systems training, simulation and performance assessment. And he actually has volunteered with the Coast Guard as a pilot. And so we have a very broad expertise in, as well as a lot of depth in particular in air transportation systems. Could you go to the next slide? When the project was, when the call first came out for this project, Greta Ballantyne was listed as a sponsor. We later learned that John Stillings is going to be our technical point of contact, and so and that's the direction that Greta gave us after we were awarded. To give you a little bit about the project, so we're going to look at current job tasks for tech ops personnel and produce models for integration of this for this job. We're actually going to get a task analysis. There's actually a task analysis that's under development, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we're going to look at integration of this into existing courses that have outdated or no job alignment. And so the outcomes for this project is, to be able to research those tasks. A lot of this will be given to us, and then develop a model for integration of the job task analysis into those courses. According to the FAA, we have some documentation that we're using as reference material. So we're going to be looking at JO 3000.22, the ATO outcomes-based technical training, as well as 3000.57, which is the tech ops training and personnel certification documentation. But I did also want to mention the task analysis. So maybe it'll be best to go to the next slide as we talk about task one. So it turns out, could you go to the next slide? Okay. So Dr. Dana Broach is a personnel research psychologist at CAMI, and our project is predicated on having this task analysis. So initially in the original call, I think this was supposed to be done in fall. It moved into January. And so our period of performance already started, but the FAA has asked us to wait until this task analysis is completed, and we've been in contact with Dr. Broach. And so at this point, basically we're still we've been through the reference materials, and we're a little bit on hold until we get that documentation from him. But we'll need that in order to look at the state of training and training documentation for those tasks. And once we complete that, then we can move on to identify the gaps. Could you go to the next slide, please? So in task two, that's where we're going to use those task analyses and look at what systems are being interacted with, and be able to build a descriptive formal system model, and look at what knowledge the human operator should be able to possess, so that we can then analyze the state of the training system to ensure that we have a good model for what the operator should possess And then if we move forward to task 3, which is on the next slide, then we can synthesize those findings and make recommendations for integration of that task analysis into the current curriculum. Another outcome we would like to be able to do, which is part of our statement of work, is to also document the processes that we're using, because we're hopeful that these processes will be able to be repeated for other projects, and we'll make everything available to the FAA and actually whoever is interested. So we're hopeful to have some research dissemination beyond the Center of Excellence. I just have a couple more slides. Please go to the next slide. This is just to remind people that our project has technically been awarded and started, but because of this, task analysis dependency, we're really thinking that the majority of the work will take place after January 1. And so when we had written the original statement of work, we assumed it was a 1-year project, and it's really now I guess a 15-month project. So our planned due dates, which were based on a 12-month project start, really instead of 4 months after a project started, should really be 4 months after we get the task analysis for January 1. And the same thing with the second report will be 11 months after we get the task analysis for January 1, and then we'll have our final report at the end of the project, which will be in December. And so I just want to mention on the very last slide a little bit about our funding and how we're doing with match. So our project has a sponsor cost, $100,000, and we will meet our dollar for dollar university match. Purdue is going to meet the match with a lot of in-kind effort. Drexel actually is very fortunate because of the EduWorks contribution. We have permission to use the EduWorks in kind as part of the Drexel match. The other thing I did want to mention is we have identified the personnel on the Drexel side. And in the proposal, we talked about working with a postdoc. It turns out he's still a doc, so he was supposed to have defended and been ready to get started on January 1. It turns out that Andy probably won't be completely finished. He's defending in January, but you never know how this PhD goes, so if he has some updates to do. So some of the tuition for his last quarter is also going to be part of the Drexel match. So I just found out yesterday that there was another $9,816 of tuition match. So there's going to be another $46,704 of match. Some of it is going to be my time, and some of it's going to be some, I don't know what you want to call it, but like this meeting, project administration, dissemination time for part of the Center of Excellence, and probably by the next PMR on the Drexel side, we'll have all the match completely determined. I was hopeful to have had it all figured out by today, but because of this post-doc, pre-doc situation, the original plan that we had wasn't completed. If you look at our spending, we actually haven't spent any money, technically, of the original $100,000, because we're planning to spend most of it, after we actually have the task analysis in hand. And that's all I prepared.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bass. And thank you for calling in.